I have something I'm going to pass out so that for Heidi to get this online, what I did, who's running the you? Yes, I have a slide to send her
Okay.
or to post,
Okay.
share. Okay.
Okay.
So so as not to not pay attention to online. So it's under on the splash drive under Deemer March would have file is called Deemer March. I'm not going to do it right away.
Okay.
Michelle.
Good, because
Oh,
oh, there's a problem with this drive. Scan the drive now and fix it. So what am I supposed to do now? No, she just gave me a thing to get a file off of. I don't know what that.
Oh, there it is. So just so you know, in case there's another way to do this, this is what's going to get measured out. I have some pens and pads just in case some of you might want to use them. Yeah, whatever. I don't have enough for everybody. Like share, which was one of the themes of my sermon. Brilliant. We have to share.
You're gonna want to share that file with Heidi. Yes.
So test this. I know. Share this over here. And see that. It's almost, yeah, you're welcome, you know.
Okay. We're taking.
Yes, you know, you have a session to get this. Oh, sure. Here's share.
You should share screen. You try to share sound.
This.
Okay.
And this is like the.
Yeah.
So are we not doing it right away?
We're not doing it.
Okay, so let's leave it alone until she's.
I guess.
So I'm interested as Michelle and Sue are trying to figure out. Are you gonna start back up with the? No, I won't. Okay, it'll be a while, right? Yeah, it'll be a while because I want to talk about some other things before we get to that. That might be probably in 10-15 minutes or so. So I wanted to share two things. I had a couple of conversations. The reason I was a little late around my sermon. And one of the things that I found is I'm now in conversation after being primarily with Palestinians when I was in and Jordan with folks who are very involved in Israeli education, which are very different to what's going on now. And so I am reading with a group of several Jewish people I met on the plane coming back from Amman. Started a conversation where they, those folks, very openly at first asked me what I was with a group called Sabeel, which is an organization that is around supporting Palestinian perspectives, primarily Christian, and so their vision is to invite people from the United States and other countries. I was in an international delegation with people from Guatemala, Canada, UK, United States, Peru on our team. But to invite us to just have conversation and see. So the motto is come and see, go and tell. So I was on the plane with these couple of people who are coming on the way back, and this was, I got stuck in Amman. I was the last person in the delegation to be coming home. And so I was all by myself. And I got stuck there when Israel attacked Iran in June. So they closed all the airspace. So I was there alone for a week after our trip ended and had to figure out and have conversation with people and so on about. I also was trying to figure out how, if I have to stay here for a while, because a number of the Palestinians said this is going to take a while before they open the airspace and before you're going to be able to get a flight. So I was trying to figure out what am I going to do. And so I got to know a couple of folks who did not speak English, but we were using Google Translate back and forth, back and forth. And so one of them, who was a cab driver, was driving me back and forth to things. He said, "You stay for a month, I'll teach you Arabic." So I had a plan. I had a plan. But I met these two Jewish folks on the plane, and they asked me what I had seen and experienced, and I said genocide and apartheid. And one of them said, "I am deeply offended by what you say." And so she turned away and she went to talk to me. And then towards the end of the flight, and some of you have told this story too, but I was really wanting to watch Lawrence of Arabia while I was on the plane. So, no, because I had gone on an excursion to Wadi Rum, which is where like Raiders of the Lost Ark was filmed and stuff. So it has a whole different view once you've been there. Right. And so she turned to me, and I'm in the middle of Lawrence of Arabia, right? And I'm really ticked actually because I want to see the movie. But she said, she said, "I think I need to listen to you." So we've started a conversation, and we're reading this book. And this is a long way to introduce the fact that I want to recommend this book to you. If you're interested in a perspective that is theologically grounded, and which relates to some of the stuff I talked about today, although what I said is my view. But this guy, Peter Beinart, is a Jewish journalist, and he looks back further behind Abraham to the kind of promises that predated Abraham's promises, and he looks at what the Jews, what the Torah says about how Jewish people need to be a covenant in the world, and so being Jewish after the destruction of Gaza, it's a real challenge. So these two Jews that I met on the plane were reading this together. Yeah, because one of the things that I thought is I certainly did get a view about how Palestinians are treated, but I also need to have a wider view. This is part of what came my ideas for the sermon today about how do you keep a wider lens and keep the relationships such that you can actually hear where people are coming from, and where the emotions are in all of this. Because so much of this is around, as Peggy told me, this is one of her books. You use the word genocide and you use apartheid; those are trigger words for Jews, and they're associated with the Holocaust, something else. So, but anyway, so I want to commend this to you. Being Jewish after the destruction of Gaza, Peter Beinart. Feel free to Google it. But I think it's really fine, thoughtful, and compelling and disturbing. And the other thing, I just came across this Palestinian American poet. Everything Comes Next, and I've been reading kind of during Lent. I've been reading her poems as part of my Lenten consideration prayers. Naomi Shahid Nye. She's the children's poet laureate in the United States. So Everything Comes Next. It's just really beautiful stuff. And even though it's children's stuff, it's like a children's sermon, really, a lot of times. It's really adults hear more than the children do. Let me see the name. So why don't I pass these both around? You're welcome to take a look and see. I do some digital books, but I still prefer. I love paper.
So while you're doing that, my curiosity requires me to ask that conversation that you had once the woman beside you was open to hearing and listening. Where was that left when you parted?
Well, she asked me to tell the story of the people we encountered and while we were on the plane. And then she said, I need to hear that. And then as we were getting ready to get off the plane, thank you for asking me. She came to me, turned around and she said, I think we should keep talking. So we made a covenant. So she lives in Chicago and I teach in Chicago. So so what we decided is every time I'm in Chicago, we will spend time together. And so now that since June, I think I've seen her 5 times. And then we're going to Zoom this afternoon because um, uh, uh, what happened yesterday. She wants to talk. So, and she was also in a shelter during that. All the folks in Jerusalem were sent into shelters when they bombed Iran previously, and she was real shook up about that because she'd never had to deal with that before. So what I was experiencing on the plane with her was post shelter stuff, which we talked about. I think she's also fascinated because she's not met a Lutheran pastor. And it's not unusual for me to have to deal with that. So, because I served in Oklahoma. So,
yeah.
So,
Real Lutheran struggle there.
yeah, right. Less than 1%. And so what you have to do is be yourself. And also one of the things I didn't do for years when I was parish pastor is I never wore a collar because it's just not part of the culture there. So I said, I walked out of the house this morning. Bob goes, "You got a Jesus shirt on?" I said, "It's different culture here, though." So you got a Jesus shirt on? Yeah. I'm really intrigued by what's happening at Redeemer right now. Yeah, I loved Dave, just so you know, and I still love Dave, and I love him now too. Love him, love them. Good colleagues, always wonderful. So I'm always interested in the kind of the work of the congregation beyond the work of the pastor too. How in the organization that I run is about strengthening congregations, partly by resourcing the pastors, the leaders, and so on, but also about looking at how a congregation carries God's call in the congregation, not through the pastor. So I'd like to hear from you what your perspective is on this challenge at this time. What are the things you think Redeemer has to keep in mind from your vantage point as you look at God's call for you? And partly that I'd like to think this is preparation for the work you're going to do. This conversation, preparation for the work you're going to do in your call committee, what the work that Elizabeth's going to be doing with you as an interim too. Really important work that interims can do in partnership with congregation. And also, it's not just about waiting for your settled past. And I know you know that. Yeah. But I need to say it. Right? I need to say it. Yeah. So I've told this story many times here in various ways, but I was in my first call for 19 plus years. Absolute surprise, right? Another part of the country. My dad didn't even know where Oklahoma was. I'm from Western New York. I expected, because I followed a pastor who had an affair, was removed. I don't know what possessed the bishop to put a 25-year-old person just out of seminary in that, to interview. And in fact, they didn't want to interview me. The church didn't want to interview me because I was young, because I was female. There were no women pastors there. I know it sounds weird. It was in the 80s. There were no women pastors. So, but they interviewed me and they called me. And I believe to this day that they called me partly because I was cheap. But, very great. Right. Also, Abraham was not really perfect. Emlyn Ott is not perfect. And so we had a good run, just want to say. But I also became aware that you can have different chapters in ministry, even with the same pastor, as you saw with Pastor Al here. You have very different chapters to your ministry. Right? But so there are new challenges today than there were. Even when I started teaching at Trinity, which was 20 years ago, it's a very different church now. Oops. Who's here? Who isn't here? So tell me what you think are the interim challenges that you have right now.
Well, I don't think we have as many challenges as other congregations. Because we had Al, he had sabbaticals, he was ill. And then Dave, was here and there in his 9 years with us.
Got a sabbatical.
Yeah, and I think our congregation has strong committees and strong desires to help people, like calling on people who are ill or, distant from the church or something. So I think we work a little differently than some churches do. And so I don't think there's this panic that we don't have anybody here, because we had, 8 pastors that preached or something, and Teddy's coming back next week.
Yes, he'll be here next week.
And then Elizabeth will be here right after that. So I don't sense a sense of panic with what's going on.
So you don't have a sense. It is something to just keep an eye on it, even in yourself. I said keep an eye on the whole thing when you don't want to share things. Same thing if you want to have it. I don't know about you, but sometimes I just want to get something accomplished, get things settled, stuff. But this is not a kind of routine time too, and so that adeptness during this time is piece. But there's a structure here that you know how to operate when there's not a consistent pastor here. And this is what I heard, tell me if it's true, but you asked for different voices in the pulpit during the century. I think that's great, really. Teddy's one of my favorite people in the world. I just know him. So thanks, Ruth. Yeah,
Well, this will be my third transition here at Redeemer.
okay, that's good.
And I grew up with my mother going, you don't belong to the pastor, you belong to the church.
Yes. And so that's a
That's-
principle that you
there's a
took
principle.
seriously. Yeah.
But I will say that the interim that the bishop at the time sent us before Al, we sent back.
Oh.
Well, we said he did not fit the culture and how we operated. And there was even back then a sense of how we operate.
Who are you referring to?
I don't remember the man's name, but it was very hair pastor. And Jenny Foresta sent him back. She
We
said,
want to
"We can't-"
return to sender.
Right, yeah. I think he was here one
Before Al.
Sunday, and she goes,
For Al.
"You can't deal with it."
So even then, I'm saying, so this is something in I'll say in the DNA here, that you really have a sense of who you are.
Yeah.
And part of the story I didn't get to, but I'll tell you now, is that what I had to do with this church I served for so long, I got a call from that head of that call committee after I've been at Trinity, and they were looking for someone to follow me. And what she said was really funny. She said, "Pastor, they keep sending us losers." And I said, wait for the right fit, however long it takes. So also return to sender as needed. Now that can be interpreted as a congregation being difficult too, but maybe.
Well, we got a woman, and I, for the life of me, can't remember the woman's name.
Leslie.
No, it was
No.
not Leslie.
Yeah,
This was
yeah.
before Al. And we got a woman, and she was awesome. But I, for the life of me, and it was unusual then to get a woman, to have a woman.
It was the middle of the 80s.
Yeah, and so anyway, and so then, then we get out. then we get whatever Dave was, United Church of Christ.
Yeah,
Now we're getting an Episcopalian.
you're very ecumenical. Yeah, yeah. Dave loved to tell the story about when he interviewed about you all were more interested in whether he's Lutheran enough rather than that he was a gay man, right? Which I think is really says something about your identity too as a congregation as well. Although I was a little, I think I was thinking as I asked the kids today, I know that they are used to being handled, particularly in young people, but they didn't know about what the baptismal font was. So, that there's that kind of.
Or get it brought out that brew later. Yeah, I'm sorry, they would have. They would have gotten it.
Yeah. So, right. Context, right. What else? Tell me more. Yeah, Bill, you had your hand up.
What I like to see in the church and on the videos that I watch online is that our church is very comfortably full. It's not overcrowded, but it's certainly not in attendance showing lots of empty seats. And that so we're all in kind of the same cohort together. And I think of what a population pyramid would show of our church as to how the age distribution ranges and what that might mean in, say, 20 years or something.
So this will be part of what your call committee will look into too, because that's a piece of preparation.
It's posted by the double doors.
Yeah.
They've already done that analysis. So yeah, next to the map that's by the double doors in the narthex, there's a side piece of paper that gives age ranges, age breakdown.
So yeah, part one of the ministry site profile is demographics. And it's everything from where are we all located physically on the map to how old are we, what gender are we, all that kind of stuff.
So one of the great things about interims and now the approach or the theories that are being discussed is what it's like to live in liminal experiences. That is the in between time or places where things aren't as structured as they were in the same way. And part of that is looking. Healthy Congregations does work with congregations, and I often do history things with them and look at what the data says about their history. And a lot of times the data is not borne out by the stories that people tell. So people will say, like Bill was saying, that the congregation is comfortably full. People I worked with a church a couple of years ago that they swore that they had 200 kids in Sunday school in the 80s. Well, we looked at the data, it's just not there. Yeah. But in their minds, there was the glory days in some ways, and how to look really demographically too. That's going to be part of what you get to do during the interim is really be realistic about who you are as both gift and maybe challenge. I had a call last week, a Zoom call with a former Trinity student, was a student of mine and who worked for Health Congregations when we were there. And she and her spouse, their clergy couple, are looking to move. And they heard reading was going to be open. And the first question they asked is, how many kids? Because they have young kids. So not, I mean, and I was talking to Wendy about this too, is how to think about when one is a pastor, not, or even lay leaders too, how not to think about our needs being met, but what it's sort of like what I was talking about in my sermon. What blessing can I offer? And if I have kids, that's two of critical mass. I like to call it that way. Okay. And generally, the research shows that the age of the pastor usually draws in people in that age range. So I had, when I was young, recently married too, when I was in parish, most of the new members were all in our age cohort, just happened that way. But it's not true across the board, but this is what the research shows too. we tend to do. Or also if a clergy person has, this is an Alban Institute, research was done about 20 years ago. If someone serves 9 years or longer in a parish, now Dave was here 8 years. Yeah, 9 years or longer, the congregation generally starts to reflect the pastor's personality. Yeah. I was really so sorry for my congregation. So sorry. I stayed long. Yeah. Yes.
I would just like to note on the demographics, although the age is 19 and under, we have a fairly sizable amount. However, on the rolls, not that come to church.
So this is a current thing in the church is where are they? Right? They're affiliated, they're connected, you keep in touch, but there is a real say Ted Smith is a professor at Candler who's done a lot of research in what's happening in churches now, talks about in particular what's happening with younger folks, not even real young, like even in 40s, who are looking for spiritual growth, but not in institutional ways. And that is as innovative and cutting edge as you've always been, you're still institutional church. Right? You've always been kind of rebels, you know. So, that's what Elizabeth likes about you, just saying. Talk to her last week. I should say us. We say you. Us. Yeah. Yes.
I was wondering why a pastor would enjoy becoming an interim, because that is only temporary. And there are probably some restraints or whatever that comes along with that kind of a job. So I was curious as to the kind of personality or the kind of person that would want to do this, that would keep moving around from place to place.
Yeah. Maybe. Do any of you know interim folks? I don't. I certainly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the first person we had after Pastor Al left was Leslie Fox.
Yeah.
And she made a point of saying she loves doing interim work.
I think some people have a skill set there
Yeah.
that way of helping.
And several of the folks that I know that have that it's their specialty.
Yeah.
Partly they were thrown into it because of circumstances, and then they developed the skill set. But it's not something you learn in seminary, certainly. We're trained to be settled. But there is something really important about the ability to come in. It's sort of like the difference between being a chaplain in a hospital and a pastor of a church, because you have to come in and get to the point when you're a chaplain in a hospital or not. Right? Yeah. So there is that. I used to do call-ins, I'll put it that way, Zoom calls with people who were interims who wanted to talk through some of their challenges and stuff. It's not an easy lifestyle, because that a lot of times you think you're going to be there 6 months, you wind up there 3 years, or vice versa. People have to be somewhat nomadic or able to be nomadic, or their families support movement, or they live apart from spouses for periods of time and are able to do that. So it's kind of you're asking about the personality. You have to be mobile in some ways. One of my former students said that she's doing interims now because it's easier on her kids. In her way of thinking, it's easier on her kids. She's not contracted for a certain number of hours, that sort of thing. That makes sense. Another thing would be staff. So I may have gone on in another direction. Yeah, Bill.
I served as an intentional interim. I took the training for that and then served 3 parishes in East Tennessee.
Did you?
They were all close enough to Knoxville, where Ruth and I lived, that we never had to change residences. But we did, so we traveled together to these different parishes. And I found it to be, once I had the training, I knew what the dynamics might turn out to be. So I was prepared to kind of help deal with some of those strange dynamics after a congregation blow up or a normal situation.
Transition, yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. What I would say, that, um, during interims, sometimes what emerges are things that went underground for a while, that might be things that need to be taken care of. So that would be kind of it's like a treasure hunt for you during an interim. What is it that we maybe weren't even aware that you might just pay attention to during this period of time? Yeah.
That's kind of where my brain went when you asked the question. I think one of the most important things that comes to mind about during this period is the importance of clear communication. And I sense that many of us relied on Dave to be that person that carried information from place to place to share with others. And with that, in the absence of that, many times we fall into patterns and we just do what we did and that's how we do it. And there's nothing wrong with that, but letting others know. And there are times when change needs to be adjusted because we are absent that contiguous person. And we can have conflict when there isn't a need for that, when we have clear communication, not just with the congregation, but at all of our working together.
It's interesting, and so I brought this, you probably wonder what's she walking around with funnel and sponge. But a lot of times during interims, the level of anxiety goes up in some way or another and can flip back to operating in a particular way. So say Dave's gone, so he probably absorbed some of the anxiety about things because and most of us in ministry have been trained to be responsive to making things go. I know I have to watch myself think, oh, okay, whose job is this really? But watch where the communication links wind up automatically during an intro. So I would say we have to work at, if we are spongy, I think vergers probably are in a vulnerable position to be spongy during this time.
Yeah.
Does this make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, but to be thinking about being more funnily, and that is where the anxiety, or name it, what's going on, and wonder without, I don't know, I get irritated when things like this happen at my seminary too. I have to think through, okay, how can I respectfully name the issue and wonder where it should rightfully, where the responsibility should rightfully go, and being clear about job descriptions and stuff too, but also notice that happens. And it's when anxiety rises, it does during interims. It does. Also, sometimes the anxiety rises because of the reality right now in the ELCA is we have fewer people going to seminary. We have fewer people available for call. It takes longer to find the right person. It would be my observation. And I've been in long-term calls. I've been in a call now 8 years teaching at an Episcopal seminary, and that was 12 years of training. So I've always been lucky, blessed, yeah, to be able to stay long-term. But a lot of people move. Our average amount of time for clergy is 4 years.
Wow.
That to me, so that means that's still quick, and in some instances too for that to be the case. Yes, still. Yeah. Yeah, so there's a lot of movement even. And there's more part-time calls too. So what we have going for us is you've got stability here for full-time call.
Yeah.
And desire for it too, when you're not wrangling with, well, can we afford to call? I have a couple students that get called in situations and only have 2 years worth of money. So the heat is on to get people and money, right? Or grants or whatever else, just out of the gate as a new teacher. I mean, a new pastor. So thank Lynn, that's a good observation too, and how to think about it and identify those kinds of things, or even thinking of what, some ways, do your ordained people or members jump into the breach?
Absolutely.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Now I say this because I'm presiding 2 weeks in a row, just so you know, so I'm apparently jumping into the breach because Brad, asked me. But, and I love doing it, but, so what did you mean when you said sometimes they leave?
Well, in this transition, we lost 2 pastors because was not Lutheran enough. So
Hmm.
they left with their families.
Mhm.
So we bring people in.
Uh-huh. Well, and how to think about too, this is something to wrangle with over this interim too. Your identity, what you're gonna claim, and then people are gonna choose either to connect or not. Um, and identity of deep roots as a Lutheran identified congregation, but in the culture now, there's less definedness around the different theological strands that used to be kind of accepted as part of identity. So I think we have to, Ron Heifetz uses the term in adaptive leadership. We have to accept losses sometimes when we're defining ourselves too. So, I mean, you're going to get a different kind of leadership from Elizabeth than from Dave or from Al, just because I have to say, I thought, oh, full communion, I'm in a Episcopal seminary, this can be easy. They're different. And I have to ask so many questions. I led worship, I led communion liturgy at graduation last year. And the master of ceremonies, mistress of ceremonies is a liturgy professor. So she walked me through everything, which is fine. But she said, I don't want any of those Lutheran tendencies when you're leading.
What are those?
Right. So they have very clear places you stand.
Oh, the chancel prancing.
Yeah, I mean, it's a piece of that. It's very, very programmed. And especially it was in a cathedral. So there you see like, so I want to be I was respectful, just so you know, but I did throw in one Lutheran thing. And because it moved to the front, they want at the end of the service to say the blessing. But I guess I didn't. She said I could just tell you were standing up for yourself. I'm like, that to be able to define yourselves during this time is kind of cool to be able to say, do we want to be more Lutheran? Do we want to find a pastor too who is really steeped in that and kind of, I think though, I think always a challenge right now is to have a Lutheran um, frame in contemporary expression. Because I think that we have something really important to talk. Yes.
Well, it sounds to me like you know Elizabeth.
Yes.
So I was wondering,
I do know her.
what you could share with this group about her so that we might know her a little bit before she arrives.
Well, I like her. I will tell you this. I think she's really smart. But I think you need to get to know her.
Well, and I did write a biography of her in Reflections a couple of weeks ago.
Well,
Put her
I don't
picture
think
in.
I read it, I'm sorry.
See? Well, and that's one of the lines of communication, and if people don't read it, there's a lot in it.
That's true. And that challenge too during times when things are changing too. I'm gonna confess, I don't read everything. I do know Elizabeth. I think highly of her. And she is super excited about being with you. So she is a very energetic. But I'll be interested in the relationship that she develops with us. too. And she even said to me, because so she has been a part of Healthy Congregations, which is a nonprofit that I run, and she's on our board. So just for full disclosure. So she came to me after she accepted from the call, and she said, "Are you okay with that I'm gonna be your pastor?" I said, "Sure, sure, I'm fine with that." So we'll work out our relationship, and I look forward to seeing her with you with us. Oh, exactly.
Answer that.
She's yeah, I don't know. She is mature. She's not. Yeah.
So going even back
Well,
to some of your
well,
worries a
yeah,
little bit through
no
the
pictures,
interim and all
flashes.
that. Is that,
Is she in her fifties?
Probably.
Fifties?
It's like a big gray hair.
It's sometimes blue.
She's
She,
purple.
yeah, purple and blue. She has seasonal hair. That's what I was saying. Yes,
Lights color.
so
yeah.
the worry probably sometimes I have is just, and I think we're really good at this. We've referred to during sabbaticals and stuff like that. We learned really well with Al that the church is, the pastor is at the center of the spoke.
Yeah,
of
I
that
think
wheel.
that's been
You
part
know,
of your.
and so I think we're
information.
good at that, but my worry sometimes is just really keeping our enthusiasm with our ministries going and staying active and involved in lots of different things. Because like when COVID hit, it was really easy to just kind of withdraw, and getting back going again. I just, I want to make sure, hence like, we're gonna try to get fellowship going again, but it's easy to kind of like sit back and think, oh, we're in this interim period. And I just want to keep life going at the church, because church is the community, and I think we need to feel like we're a community, and it's being involved in lots of things together.
Yeah, so I think I would say, what you're raising is really important, but I also see many of the congregations that we've worked with during interims, they work hard to do that, and then they're pooped out by the time the new pastor arrives.
So your blessing.
But I was thinking about, I had a parishioner who came up to me one time when I was in the parish and said, "Pastor, I think you have a math problem." Now I'm doing our taxes right now, so I think I'm okay. But I'm messing with our parsonage expense, but what he meant, and I think about this, I think churches have math problems sometimes too, is that we know how to add, but we don't know how to subtract. Thoughtful, mission-oriented subtraction. Where are the priorities? What can we staff? What can we support? And where do we want to place our, focus? So that would be the thing that would be a really good thing to be looking at during interim and into the beginning of your our relationship with a new head of staff. So April.
I've got one little nugget of wisdom concerning interims. My church in Hawaii is going through the interim process right now. It's a vastly different situation than we have here. And they're about 3-4 months ahead of us in the process. But I got to know the interim when I was visiting back there last fall, and she had a difficult time not too long ago because everybody expected her to be like Jeff. And she was very distraught for a few weeks, maybe a month or so over that. Things just kind of piled up, and everybody just expected things to be the way they were, and it wasn't, obviously. So I would like to encourage us, and we may sit here and go, "Oh, we'd never do that." Well, it might happen. To be very mindful of not doing that, and Elizabeth is probably going to do things differently than Dave did. That's a given. But just to keep that in the back of our heads, not to make comparisons, and just kind of go with the flow. And the one thing that Dave told me when I met with him before he retired, he said, the ministries are going to continue. And exactly what Michelle said. We got to keep going with the ministries and the things that we know how to do and do well.
One of the things, I think I can say this, I'm a mutual ministry, so I know some stuff. which is not, I'm not divulging confidential things, but one of the things I noticed about even Dave's sabbatical is that part of what he needed to do was sift where his priorities would be. So he got involved in some of this around his time and energy versus stuff like that. So I don't think that's, anything confidential, but I would say that's what sabbaticals are for too, is to recalibrate and also determine what next steps would be as well. I passed out, this is, I think I mentioned this the last time I did the education time, and I know we're past our dinging hour right at 12:15, but Healthy Congregations looks at congregational function as part of what we're doing. We're doing some research now. We got a grant from Lily to look at, particularly we're interested in small rural congregations right now. And that doesn't mean we're not interested in others, but we're looking at these 5 capacities in congregations. So I wonder if you would really just take a few minutes right now and indicate where you think right now Redeemer is along the spectrum in resourcefulness between helpless and engaged. And it start with 1, let's say 1 through 10. 1 is helpless, 10 is engaged. Under tension, 1 is unmanaged, 10 is well regulated. Connectedness, 1 is cut off, or like everybody knows what everybody else is doing. It's like it could be both. Or open contact, right? Focus, 1 is narrow, 10 is broad, and this would be one of the things that I heard in our conversation for attention during the interim and into our new ministry is, where's the focus going to be? And then the goal structure. Are there 1, no goals, 10 realistic ones? Would you put up like a little check right now? Yes, there it is on screen too, with colors. Heidi gets colors. If you could do that too, Heidi, as indicate on that spectrum, where do you think today Redeemer is on that spectrum?
Intention again, please.
Would be whenever there is folks that are upset about something, it's just not attended to, is 1. And then along the way, if it's attended to, listened to, and also contained as well, over an issue. Just trying to think of it. I would say an example, the church that I served, they didn't manage at all what happened with removal of the pastor. So that ongoing tension was really palpable for a long time because no one had any information. What's going on? Can I get you a pen? Next one.
Well, I have,
We have one?
okay, it's just that I have trouble hearing you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And knowing and understanding the direction. That's all
I
right,
hope I can answer questions and be more clear.
okay.
It's your observation about the functioning right now. And this is what I want to say. I want to invite if you had any thoughts about it, in addition to wondering how to do this. But at the end of the interim, I'll ask you the same question. So save your paper. Yeah, date it. And then with the permission of our well, I'll do that with Elizabeth's permission. Elizabeth knows about this kind of research. We don't know I'm doing this today, but then with the permission of the settled pastor, everybody else can do it later. But what we do, this is just an easy way to look at these questions, but we have an inventory we do that would put it on the scale based on your, but I thought I'd give you a little kind of exercise to be thinking about all 5 of these capacities. And I think you named some of them already.
And in a few weeks, we'll be presenting some questions for the ministry site profile. And they're sort of reflective about what we're talking about right now. So you'll be invited to participate in that.
Oh, good, good. I'm glad we could do something that would lay the ground. Anything come to mind as you were filling it out other than not sure what my instructions were? Anything come to mind about what's happening here or something you noticed you hadn't thought about before our discussion? In our discussion.
No, but my home congregation too is also in the interim process right now. And we have, to my mind, Redeemer has a whole lot better outlook than this little tiny church in rural Iowa, part of a 4-point parish.
Wow.
How they're gonna get another pastor.
Yeah, yeah, you know, in the hilltop here in Columbus, right now there are, I'm working with a Methodist pastor. There's 4 Methodist churches and they're trying to figure out, they've got 4 buildings with 20 people in worship in each one of these 4 places. So, I mean, and I think in inner city and rural situations, you wind up having these massive structures sometimes that were filled at one time, to reference to Bill's bluff. That now they have, and they don't necessarily, those congregations don't relate to each other. So what do you do? So, yes.
I just want us to share 2 comments and having been on the call committee the last time around. Well, this first comment isn't even about being on the call committee as much as I think it's such a healthy process. We really, as a congregation, reflect on who we are and that I think it's a great thing to, like, if you always had the same pastor forever and ever and ever, like, it gives you a chance to come back and think, is this who we are? Is this who we want to be? Where do we want to be going and all that stuff? And I guess my other comment I wanted to make with my experience on call committee was to me, our experience, the call committee the last time was very much like when I took my kids to college. You've heard me share this before, but when we went to colleges, we thought, oh, okay, this is nice. This is a nice campus, and they weren't saying that badly, but they were like, okay. And then, oh, okay, that's that, like that. But all of a sudden, when we hit the one that they felt was right for them, they knew it. And I think we need to have that patience because I think we're gonna interview people and be like, okay, good person, or her, that person. But I think when you feel like this is a good match, and I think you make a good point about not just a match for us. Oh, good, we got a good match, but is it a good match for the pastor too?
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
So you're saying that if we have a pastor for a long time, we should probably do this evaluation thing, like once every 8 or 10 years or something, to just,
Absolutely.
it's like, who
It's
are
not a bad thing.
in this place at Scotland and James? Who are we? Who do we want to be? Are we living up to that?
And especially in the time period that Dave was here. I mean, look what happened. COVID. And we've been looking through the demographics of, well, I have because I'm a geek, but I've been looking at demographics of all the other churches in Columbus, in the metro area, in the state of Ohio. And they're all like, here's where we were in 2017, here's where we were in 2021, and we've only just a little bit come back in 2025, 26. It was not what you might have hoped it would have been, that, okay, COVID's over, let's go back up, participation way up here again. It's not. There aren't any churches that are doing that in any denomination.
Well, and to be honest, they're not even doing it in entertainment arenas.
Right, right.
I mean, our son and daughter-in-law owned a axe throwing range in Houston, and they did not get back the folks after COVID. people were not going out. They were used to staying home. They were used to entertaining themselves.
So the interesting thing in the work that I do, the impact then on people, humanity, development, formation, all those things, if one is not out. And not in community in some way or another. If you, I just read a book by Jonathan Haidt called The Anxious Generation. It's all about the like cell phone, it's cell phones, but also that children don't play like they used to, and that the impact of that there's a lot more fear too about people being out and about too. So there's so many factors. I was gonna say, I thought that part of what happened with COVID is we finally dealt with some stuff that was really under the covers before, and now it's all come out, and then yeah, what are you gonna do?
And
Yeah.
and the whole online ministry thing had opened up, there's also an opportunity. And, so it's, you lose some things, but but other opportunities present. And are you gonna be nimble enough? Is that something, at least we were able to get the technicalities of it up and going. There are people who follow us online regularly. So
There's a Episcopal church in New Albany that they have larger online presence, and they're a pretty good sized church too. They have a couple hundred in worship on Sundays, and then they have 300 online. What's that about? Yeah,
yeah,
and also they don't just live cast. It's done differently online too. So I think that that's another thing that we all have to acknowledge, that engagement online needs to be different than just streaming what we do. I mean, we have to deal with, I teach in a seminary that is primarily online. Now I have in-person classes that I do because of my area. I'm a pastoral care person, so. And it's
Really bad in.
there is something carnational about that area but we've had to learn over time about how to do that differently going forward. And we have bishops that don't believe that ministry leaders can learn online. They just don't believe it.
before we go, I'd
Yes.
like to remind everyone, if I'm sure you've heard of it, that we're going to be having interim come in a couple of weeks. Yeah, and it's going to be, there's some curiosity around, some questions that we may have about her, and we're gonna have an opportunity to have some time with her in a get to know you session after her maiden run that Sunday, and following there will be a small reception to welcome her. So please come with all your questions. I don't know if she's gonna want to answer aloud how old she is. I don't think that's up to her. Google. That's right. But she is, having met her, she is one of the most open people that is willing to hear and listen and understand. And I'm sure she would welcome any questions that genuinely come from a place of wanting to know. So keep an eye on that. We'll keep reminding you, I'm sure.
I think I can tell you she's a dog person.
Or she's connected to massive numbers of people by 1 or 2 degrees of separation. That she has been around.
She's
the
from
states and the
Columbus. She's from
country.
Columbus. Yeah, she's from Bexley.
And some of our members have had just an opportunity to have a brief encounter or a missing encounter, which she can probably tell you about, and so can you.
That's great. Great invitation. So great to be with you. I know, I overstayed my welcome here.
Oh,
Yeah, is that right? Okay. Have a good rest of the day.
thank you.
Yeah. Good to be with you today, always.
Thank you for leading us in worship today, and
Thank you.
Thank you for leading a lovely discussion.
What a lovely story.